Hey guys, as you know, I am a huge fan of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and in preparation of the new Power Rangers reboot that's going to be coming out on March 24th, I figured why not review the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie as well as Turbo, a Power Rangers movie. But today I'm going to be talking about the first and original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie. This film was directed by Brian Spicer and stars Jason David Frank, Steve Cardenas, Johnny Young Bosch, David Yost, Karen Ashley, and of course Amy Jo Johnson. The story of this film is that an ancient being known as Ivan Ooze has been released. He's been unearthed from this sort of construction site that's going on in Angel Grove, and he wreaks havoc on Angel Grove as well as destroys the command center and leaves Zordon basically on the edge of his life. Now the Rangers have to be transported to another world, which actually I never really believed as another world. It just looks like another part of Earth. But anyway, they get transported there and have to find a new power, this ninjetti power that will better fuel their Ranger powers and give them new Zords and all sorts of new abilities that they haven't had before to stop Ivan Ooze before he takes over Angel Grove and eventually the world. Now, as I've mentioned before, I am a massive Power Rangers fan, and when this film came out in 1995, it was the epitome of my existence. It was the best thing that ever happened to me, and I remember that I was so spoiled that my grandparents used to take me to McDonald's. They had these toys there that were like the new Ninjetti Zords with the little Power Rangers figurines, and I had to make sure I had every single one. Every single Ranger I had to have, every single Zord I had to have. I still have them in my house somewhere, I just have to find them, but I still do have those to this day. I was extremely spoiled by them, and I love them for that. But back to the movie. This movie was a culmination of an obsession that I had when I was a kid, and it was absolutely glorious. Now, revisiting it 22 years later, when I'm older, it's a trip down memory lane, but it definitely does have its drawbacks as well. Now, I'm not going to say that this film is perfect by any means. It's a 1995 film. It has a lot of flaws that are pretty endless, but I also want to talk about some positive things that I noticed while revisiting this film and things that really brought out that nostalgia of wanting to revisit the Power Rangers world all over again. And actually something that I found really interesting while preparing for this video is that I looked on Rotten Tomatoes to find out what exactly the reviews were for Power Rangers, and surprisingly, for a 1995 Power Rangers movie, this film has a 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now granted, that's still considered rotten, but I expect it to be among maybe like the 20 or 30%, maybe even lower, given the fact that there are so many pretty decent movies that are rated so low. It was pretty surprising that this film stood at a 50% when I went to go check its Rotten Tomatoes rating. Now let's get into the movie itself. Now, one of the biggest positives of this entire movie has to be the action sequences. That is essentially what the Power Rangers were known for, and actually were probably one of the best parts of the show themselves, were the action sequences that were actually part of the original Japanese show that they sort of cut together with the American actors. Now, this film was completely done with American stunt work, American scenes, American actors, everything. So there was no reliance on the original TV show because there was no Power Rangers movie. Now, when they made this movie, there were some pretty decent action scenes, I'm not going to lie, but the best one, hands down, is the very first one where we see the Power Rangers change into their actual Ranger costumes to fight some Ivan Ooze monsters at a construction site, and that is hands down the best scene of the entire movie. It does have a lot of quirkiness and like plenty layers of cheese, just like the original TV show had, where all their movements make sounds, they make stupid little quips and jokes, but it's also fantastic because it really brings everything you love about Power Rangers into one scene. It's over the top at times, it has ridiculous wire work and things that are essentially unnecessary, like when Tommy jumps down from like 3 stories and kicks this ooze monster like 50 times in the chest before he lands against the wall and explodes. Completely over the top, but absolutely wonderful for Power Ranger fans to see things that they sort of are familiar with from the original show. Now, one of the pitfalls of the original show is that the actors, the American actors, just weren't quite that believable, I guess, in a way. I mean, it was a kid's show in the 90s. It wasn't meant to be like some soap opera or some like massive dramatic work of art. It was just a kid's show that got brought over from Japan and added some American actors and voiceovers. So the acting in this movie isn't necessarily astounding. I mean, it's decent. It's not over the top. Oh, it is over the top at times. but it's not crazy to the amount where you're like, oh, this is completely unbelievable. These are characters you are already familiar with from the show, just on the big screen. So you have that relation and that sort of correlation with these characters already. You know who they are, where they are, like as far as relationship with each other, and what's going on around in Angel Grove, things like that. So you're already familiar with these characters. You don't need a whole lot of exposition or things to tell you about their characters themselves. Though I do wish we would have gotten a little bit more time with some of the other supporting Rangers. This film primarily focused on Tommy and Kim, the white and pink Ranger. Other than that, the rest of the Rangers sort of had lines every now and then. They were in the action sequences, but they were never really a main part of the group. It was mainly a Tommy and Kim movie more than anything else, but I can't really blame them, considering those were the two most popular characters of that particular group at the time. Another big positive for me was the villain, Ivan Ooze, of this film. Now, the reason I think that he was such a big positive, for me at least, is that he felt a little bit more fleshed out. He was a little bit more charismatic, but you could also sense that villainy and evil that was at the root of his character. It was actually a villain that, although not fully developed, I would say, in the course of the runtime of the film, it felt like he actually had a backstory that semi-made sense, and like he had a revenge plot against Zordon and wanted to take over the world, as opposed to other characters who just wanted to be the big bad because Rita made them grow, or something like that. It just felt a lot more fleshed out. He felt a lot more sinister than maybe some of the villains that we saw on the TV show, or even some other villains that are in modern comic book movies now. He just felt a little bit more fleshed out overall. And there were several times where you actually felt a bit uneasy. You didn't know if he was going to go off the deep end and just go completely crazy, or if he was just going to make a stupid little joke. I really did feel like he was a much more put together villain than a lot of other villains in movies of the modern times. Now, the biggest negative for me in this film has to be the CGI. It was completely garbage. Even at the time, like in 1995, this was some of the worst CGI I think I may have ever seen. And that's kind of unfortunate, considering this was a major franchise that got developed from TV onto the big screen. Their budget went through the roof, and their CGI just did not hold up then, and it really does not hold up now. If you put modern day Moana next to 1995 Power Rangers, Moana blows it out of the water. There's just nothing compared to the amount of CGI that they used in this film. It just does not match up well at all. It looks terrible by today's standards. It looks even worse by then standards. Another thing that really bothered me about this movie is that they had changed the original Zordon from the original one from the TV show into the movie version. Now, this came about when production shifted to go to Australia. The actor that was originally Zordon could not go, or didn't want to participate, or something legally contracting. I don't know exactly what it was. But the fact that they got a new Zordon, it just didn't fit right. This old guy that they kind of got just made no sense as Zordon to me. It just didn't feel like the actual show. It didn't feel like the character that we had known for the past 2.5 years, 3 years at that point. So it just felt very inorganic in that sense, and I just couldn't quite believe it. Another thing that even bothered me more than that about Zordon is that when Ivan Ooze breaks the command center and like sort of takes Zordon out of his sort of time warp thing, originally in the show I thought he was being channeled from somewhere, but in this one he's sort of like this guy in a, not suit necessarily, but like a blanket or a bag of some kind underneath some crystals. And in a way, for some reason, I never thought this ever since I was a kid, Zordon kind of looks like just like a guy dressed as a tamale laying on some crystals. Maybe that's just me, but I felt like that it just didn't look right even at the time, and I still have that same thought watching it today. The grade that I'm going to give Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie, is a C. Is this film perfect? No. But it is a fun action film that has a pretty decent villain, and even for a kids movie in the 90s, I think it was pretty decent. It wasn't exactly like up there with like maybe like Shawshank Redemption or some like really dramatic heavy movies that really invoke some thought, but this one was just exactly what it was supposed to be in a lot of ways, where the Rangers they're just teenagers with attitude who have special powers and fight giant monsters. That's really what it boils down to. And then I really felt like the worst thing about this movie, hands down, CGI. I feel like if they were ever able to maybe remaster something somehow by some work of Hollywoodness, I think that it would really elevate the movie a little bit more, but I don't think that'll ever happen. If they ever put it out on Blu-ray, that would be great. I can only find this movie in Turbo on regular DVD, but I think it's just a matter of like branding or like being able to distribution rights. I don't know exactly what it is, but I felt like if they could digitally fix it up a little bit, it wouldn't hurt the movie that much. But other than that, those are pretty much my thoughts on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie. Be sure to let me know down in the comment section down below, what are your thoughts about this movie? Did you like it when you were a kid? Was there something that bothered you about the movie? Did you not like certain aspects? The thing where they became ninjas was a thing that I sort of had a tough time myself transitioning into when they changed from their original sort of Dino Rangers into like these other animal spirit type of Rangers. I had a tough time kind of getting there, but I mean, I still followed along with the show and was able to comprehend what was happening and still appreciated that I was still being able to watch the Power Rangers. But those are, again, just my thoughts. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section down below. Also, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below to make sure you can watch other future videos, and as well as hit the notification bell to be notified when I have a new video. For example, I'm going to be having my Turbo Power Rangers movie video coming up very shortly, which I'm very excited about to talk about as well. A bit of a lowering of the bar, in my opinion, but I still think it's a Power Rangers movie that I have to appreciate. Guys, that's pretty much all my thoughts. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.